Welcome, everyone, to the Aging and Spirituality podcast. This is where we're always talking about new ways to realize our highest potential. And as you can see, I have a different background doing a little traveling, but here we are, still having fun. I'm Kathy Taylor.
And I'm Chris Jensen.
And we're so happy you were here today.
We sure are.
We're going to be drilling down today on ways to identify how our soul operates versus the very myriad of ways that your ego tries to stop you from getting what you want. So this is a subject.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. This is one of those subjects that we could wrap up and do differently in a bow many times, because it's one of the big themes that goes through the spiritual journey. So this will be an interesting take on it today. I'm calling it the navigating the inner conversations, because really understanding that inner battle of what's going on between the ego and the soul gives us a much better chance of living an attuned life. So you really want to listen up on this one. The spiritual journey really helps us define how a human being is born unique. And this is one of the points I really want to get across today. It was actually the thing that inspired me to talk about this today. I wanted to have a go at talking about how, when you can distinguish between the ego and the soul, you start to have the soul express, and that essence starts to come through. And what's surprising about it is how unique it is for each individual. I mean, unique in a way that nobody else has your thoughts. Nobody else wants to do what you want to do in the way that you want to do it. I mean, there's similarities in the world about what we all do, but your expression as a soul is really unique and has a lot to do with your calling, what you're here to do. And this is what you can discover by making these distinctions, by understanding what the differences are here. So that's kind of what we're tackling today. The thing is, I always think about how many people there are on the planet, and how many religions there actually are, and if everyone is moving towards the soul, say there's a million people moving towards the soul, what we'd have is a million different stories, very unique stories of how that happens. I mean, it's so awesome to talk to people who are on the spiritual journey and see how they've processed their experiences, see how they've grown, see how they've transformed. And the creativity that comes from that is really, really fascinating. So let's talk about how we live a soul aligned life. It's such a juicy question. I love to celebrate and recognize all of the religions on the planet. The thing is, I mean, if you look at the Pew, P-E-W, Research Center about the global religious landscape, they say there are like 4,200 active religions, including the biggies: Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism. The thing is, though, we have this guy that has studied that at the yoga center, one of our teachers that has studied the world religions, and he said if you took a look at all the sects that are under those main religions, you would have thousands more. And that's just like a small peek into how unique everybody is, and how spirit expresses really differently across the world. And that's really something that should be celebrated.
And I mean, when you're saying all these different religions, isn't it we're all, in a sense, going to the same place or trying to go to the same place? We're just taking our own route.
She just read my mind. Yeah. Again, I think I was getting to do that next. Oh. And so, yes, we can agree that there are many roads to God. There are a lot of diverse ways to get there, but we're all getting to the same place. So today we're going to focus on the yogic path and how we can live a soul-aligned life practicing yoga. And what yoga teaches you when you first get on the spiritual journey, first you really think about how to relieve stress from the body and the mind. And that's how you begin your spiritual journey. you can't hear inner messages from the soul if your mind is always busy, or if you're in emotional drama mode about something that's going on in your life or somebody else's life. So we begin by practicing postures and breathing and releasing tension from the body. Then we learn to meditate. And this is how we calm our mind and our emotions. And that's how you transcend the earthly realm, the consciousness that we are dealing with every day. And we actually connect with the energetic self inside, what we call the inner self. And that's the soul. That's the same thing as the soul. The soul is the little wave of the ocean that is part of a very big ocean, which is, of course, consciousness. God, consciousness, the whole world. So as we learn to make that connection with source on a regular basis, energy begins to move up the spine and starts to stir up any blockages along the way. It's the Kundalini's job to move freely up and down the spine without obstruction. And this is the part where if I'm saying anything wrong, the yoga teacher here can jump in and correct me at any point, which is good. So as this energy is stimulated at the bottom of the spine from the first chakra, it starts to shake things up, move up the spine and shake things up. You might notice that some things that have happened to you earlier in life reappear. There can be a time of healing when the body is letting go of old memories that weren't processed when you were a young child. Thoughts and feelings are often revisited to understand these experiences and their lessons that you didn't know how to process again when you were younger. Oftentimes on the beginning of the spiritual journey, your character needs to be developed. Most of us come with character flaws. I sure did. So those opportunities will be presented to you to up-level your character, to grow and transform in ways that are going to make you a much more spiritual person. So, for example, I'll just say, put it in context. When I first came into the yoga center, I was working on my arrogance, and I didn't know I was arrogant when I walked into the yoga center. I just thought I was me.
It's a good sign of arrogance. You don't know it.
That's the great part. Yeah, it's just me. I'm being me. Yeah, Chris laughs today, but she was there in the beginning, and has always been this kind hand of showing you what arrogance actually looks like and how to let go of it. Like surrender was one of the biggest lessons on my journey for sure. I think that's probably a very similar lesson for a lot of people on this spiritual journey. But arrogance, I know, was definitely one of them, thinking that I knew everything. I was right about everything. I was always coming from my head because I felt like if everybody just get out of my way, I could get the job done. Yeah, boy, did I need
no
help.
arrogance there at all, right?
It's laughable now, but holy moly, what a mess I was when I first walked in. And thank God we had wonderful, amazing teachers like this beautiful woman here, because who knows where I'd be if I hadn't done a lot of yogic work. So anyway, those are the beginnings of the spiritual journey. And I just say that because it can feel like difficult times. It can feel painful. You may have some things to heal. Some people come in with a lot of trauma at the beginning of a spiritual journey, and those things have to be worked out as well. But really understand that with courage and the right spiritual support, you can get through it and you can move closer to your goal of connecting with soul, that creative source. So we really encourage you to do that. One of the most defining aspects of the spiritual journey has been delving into the interplay, of course, between the ego and the soul. It's something that we need to understand. They're very distinct aspects of our being that are often engaged in a tug of war between, well, the ego is mostly engaged. The soul's basically just sitting there going, okay, whatever.
It's waiting. It's waiting.
Yeah, just waiting for you to get through it. So, so knowing how your soul expresses versus how your ego tries to mess with you makes the difference really between spiritual transformation and feeling stuck. The soul is a whisperer. The soul whispers to you. You have to learn to listen deeply to hear its messages. You have to be open. You have to be receptive. That's how the soul connects with us. The ego is basically a rowdy frat boy. You can't miss it. It's really easy to pick it out. So, how do we make it even easier to differentiate between the ego and the soul? First of all, I want to just say something to get it out of the way. The ego, I mean, I'm laughing about it, but the ego is not a villain. The ego is essentially our sense of self, and it's shaped by our experiences and our beliefs and the societal conditionings that we've learned from birth. So really, how you want to interact with the ego is to understand that it's typically striving for recognition, validation, some sense of control. It's always looking outside for the answers. That's how to recognize the ego. When you, and Chris always says, when you're using the words I mean, mine,
Be mine, you know you're an ego, right?
you know you're an ego. It gets easier to do it, and then you start to learn how to deal with letting go of the ego and moving into the soul. And that's a big part of the spiritual journey. So while the ego plays a crucial role in our survival, think about that. It's very necessary, our self-preservation. It can also lead us astray, making us feel very fearful, putting us in a mode where we're comparing ourselves to others. And of course, self-doubt falls right in that category of you're in the ego. If you're in a mode of doubting, you're in the ego. The soul does not doubt at all. So what I want to say most about what I just described as the ego is that the ego, think of the ego as a blessing. It's an opportunity. It's challenging, but it's an opportunity to grow on the spiritual path. So the biggest thing you need to know about the ego is you have to befriend it, because if you try to resist it, it will win every time. Hands down. It's very clever.
So how do you do that? So, how do you get it so that it's open to the soul, so you're not battling?
Yes. Well, she just gave you the words. Opening to the soul is the answer. Putting your focus on how the soul expresses, and what does that essence of soul feel like in me? What does it sound like when it's communicating with me? Those are the things that you learn, and they also teach you how you are unique. We all do it differently. We all hear it differently. We all express soul differently based on our calling mostly. So that soul is really representing that true essence, that core of you that is really beyond the limitations of the ego. It's going to guide you towards love. The soul will guide you towards compassion and authenticity. It's the part of us that really connects with something greater than ourselves. It's seeking purpose, it's seeking meaning and connection. And when you're living in that realm, when the flow of love is able to come into your life and your world whenever you want it to, that's the soul. That's being connected to the soul. At first it feels kind of sporadic, but then when you get good at it, it's always there. You're always feeling like if you want to be loving, you can. It's available to you. You're not being brought down by feelings of anxiety or stress or doubt or, all of those things that take you out of living from your soul. So, the soul is expressing, and this is when we love to talk about, is when you want to serve others. That's a really, really, really big clue. If you're feeling called to serve others, that's a soul calling. When you want to live in and express a divine flow of love, and you're willing to do the work to get there, that's a soul calling, because sometimes it does feel like work. The challenge lies in distinguishing between the voice of the ego and the whispers of the soul. It's like having two radio stations constantly broadcasting in our minds. And we need to tune in to the right frequency, tune into the soul frequency. And if the ego needs a pat on the head, give it to him. Just don't give him space to be messing in your life,
Yeah, you don't want to be fighting with anybody.
Yes, the soul is definitely a higher frequency than the ego. You want to choose that higher frequency always. So the ego, the trickster, it'll let you think that, freedom is right around the corner. It's a trickster because when you start on the spiritual journey, we can say we've been on it, 45 years was going at least now. And we still do a lot of the same spiritual practices. We're still processing life in the same way. We're just much farther along than we were 40 something years ago. It does take some time before you really are able to free yourself completely. Much of the growth has to happen. And the real good news is that if you really keep moving forward toward God, if you're always thinking, and I use the word God because I like that word myself, but if it doesn't resonate for you, please use your word. Higher consciousness, higher power, whatever it is that works for you. Keep moving towards that pole star and you will get there. So I'm just going to sum up by giving you a few tricks. These are my 5 tricks. My title was 5 tricks about, what did I call my talk? 5 tricks to differentiate between the ego and soul and find your unique essence. So here's my 5 tricks.
I want to hear the tricks.
Number 1, observe your emotional reactions. Notice how you feel when making decisions or reacting to situations. The ego often triggers emotions like fear and anger and jealousy, while the soul triggers feelings like peace and love and compassion. That's a really quick way to find out which one you're in. Anytime your emotions trigger you, you can be sure that they are trying to guide you back to your soul. So listen deeply, move toward that goal, move toward that pole star, move toward your soul. And if you don't know how to put a word to that, use love. I use love, move towards love. If you're confused about which direction you should go in, choose love. Always choose love. Number 2, examine your motivations. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? If your actions are driven by a desire for external validation, recognition, or a need to prove yourself, which is what every child on the planet learns is important to do, your ego is trying to take charge. But when you're motivated by a sense of purpose, genuine connection with someone, others, or a desire to contribute to something in a greater way, your soul is guiding you. That's a good sign. Number 3, pay attention to your inner dialogue. The ego's voice is often loud and critical and judgmental. Don't believe it. It's not who you are. While the soul speaks in gentle and encouraging and very supportive tones. It's such a beautiful.
The soul wants to connect with others rather than separate.
Yes, definitely. Soul feels so supportive and so loving. It just is like a warm shower coming over you, You feel like someone's got your back. So notice the language that your inner voice is using, and that'll tell you whether you're paying attention to ego or living in soul. Number 4, consider the long-term impact. The ego often focuses on immediate gratification and short-term gains. That's what's important for the ego. While the soul is considering the long-term consequences. And it's seeking really the sustainable happiness and fulfillment for your own life. The soul wants you to be happy, to live happy and fulfilled and productive and all of those amazing things. And that's what it will guide you to if you pay attention to that inner voice. And number 5, practice mindfulness. Mindfulness is a way that helps us detach from the ego's constant chatter. And you can use mindfulness during the day when you're not able to sit and meditate. Maybe you're at the office or something and it's not a place where you can get away and just, go really get into a deep meditation. Use mindfulness. It detaches you from the chatter that your ego is giving you all the time. You learn how to be in presence, and it's going to connect you somewhat to the stillness within, where the soul really is in there. So when you can, of course, we promote and pray you're going to meditate, because it's how you get to your soul. Spending time in nature is also a really good way to be present and to practice that mindfulness. So there you go. There's my 5 tricks.
I love it. And those are great
Yeah.
tricks. I'm going to use them for sure.
You're so cute. So if you want to discover that unique soul that is you, you must know the difference between your soul and your ego. Make it a fun practice that you do every day. Let go of the ego and allow the soul to shine through. That's the fun part of the spiritual journey.
Be a lot more fun.
Learn to distinguish. Oh, it is, yeah. Learn to distinguish between the ego and the soul. And that's really the journey that they call the self-discovery that everybody talks about all the time. It's not about silencing the ego. It's about recognizing its role that it plays in your life. It doesn't go away. You just handle it better. And you're consciously, you learn how to align with the soul's guidance. That's the spiritual work. That's what you need to know how to do. And when you do, the benefit is you're going to navigate life with a greater authenticity, a sense of purpose, which is so important, especially for people at our stage in life. If you don't have a sense of purpose when you get up in the morning, it can lead to feeling really lonely and disconnected. This is the way to understand how to be on the journey and have inner peace, really listening to that soul's wisdom. So there you go. Thank you for joining us. Exploring the ego.
Work with
lots of food.
Great.
Yeah, for sure.
5 tips.
Yes. So explore your ego and your soul. Figure out how the soul expresses in your life. Tell us what your unique experiences are. We love to hear how soul is experiencing differently through every individual that is doing this work. You really want to embrace the journey. Let your soul shine through. If there's one thing we can say about everybody about why you're here, is to let your soul shine through. Let the light that you're meant to bring, your unique light that you're meant to bring, let it express in the world. Okay, I'm done.
Make the world a better place.
Make the world a better place for sure. Go to our YouTube channel, hit like and subscribe, please. That helps us get the word out to other people. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.